Hi everybody, thanks so much for joining us today. My name's Anne Merkovich and I'm co-chair of the PRCA's Apprenticeships and Skills Group. For those of you who don't know, as we're fairly a new group, we provide a forum for organisations running their own apprenticeships programmes, as well as working with those in the apprenticeships and skills space. The group looks to discuss the latest developments, opportunities and challenges for apprenticeships and skills. And the aim is basically to provide a forum for industry and employers to discuss how to promote the role of high quality apprenticeships, explore the apprenticeships, how apprenticeships can meet the changing skills demand for the future world of work, and to lead the debate to shape the future of apprenticeships and skills in the UK. So for today's discussion, we'll be focusing on the impact on apprenticeships since COVID-19 and how businesses can best support apprentices in the workplace, particularly at the moment as many apprentices we now know are starting to return to the office and go back to the workplace. We have a fantastic panel who will be sharing their best practice examples and tips for organisations on how and what they can do to support apprentices going forward. So we'll be hearing from Damian Corneal, who's partner at IBM and vice chair of the London Apprenticeships Ambassador Network. We'll be hearing from Morrison, who is director of Amazing Apprenticeships, and we'll be hearing from Stephanie Umebuani, who is head of apprenticeships at the PRCA. And we're also recording today's session, so this will be circulated to our media channels and to our PRCA members as well. So I'm going to kick off with my first speaker. So Damian, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Anne, and good afternoon all. As said, my name is Damian Corneal, and I'm a partner in IBM's hybrid cloud services. My focus is actually on health and life sciences, so specifically enabling better patient and citizen outcomes through the use of technology. I'm also the IBM executive sponsor for BAME Early Years Professionals Business Resource Group, again focused on enabling and supporting and empowering early professionals from BAME backgrounds to have successful and impactful careers at IBM, and these include apprentices. I'm the vice chair of the London Apprenticeship Ambassador Network. The network's a group of ambassadors from large, medium, and small enterprises, really focused on raising awareness of apprenticeships across London and hoping to inspire more people and businesses to consider the benefits of pursuing an apprenticeship qualification or running an apprenticeship program. So, in industry, we know apprentices and apprenticeships have proven to be a great avenue for attracting more diverse workforce, tapping into new talent pools and molding a new generation of employees. For UK PLC on the whole, it's a viable channel for bringing and bridging the current skills gap across many sectors. Our network of ambassadors hosts a multitude of events and workshops to empower employers, providing insights and recommendations to the Institute for Apprenticeships, by extension, the Department for Education. We hold events for potential apprentices to understand the opportunities available to them. We also have a Young Apprenticeship Ambassador Network, which is extremely active in schools and colleges, talking to young people about the benefits of the apprenticeship route. For example, how you earn while you learn, with no student debt, gain earlier entry into top companies with guaranteed jobs after graduating, with your apprenticeship standard or even a degree. The reason I'm saying all of this is because I am going to plug for folks within the organization to get more involved in things like the Apprenticeship Ambassador Network. Just this weekend, an article in the Times quoted a London School of Economics study outlining what many of us have been thinking for some time. Pursuing an apprenticeship qualification at level 4 or above leads to on average higher earnings in your 20s than pursuing a degree, and this is without student debt. Not surprising when you consider someone doing a degree apprenticeship would be finishing their qualification with 4 years industry experience already under the belt. We're not saying no to degrees, we're just simply saying that apprenticeships are really a valuable route and valid route for folks coming into industry. We of course need to talk about COVID-19 and its impact on apprenticeships. During the pandemic, it's reported that young people have been the group most affected by furloughing and job losses. It was thus absolutely key that as a network, we supported employers' take up of the myriad of government incentives now available to ensure we do not inadvertently miss out on a generation of talent from the UK workforce. And now we come to, there are also practical steps that we can all take to best support our apprenticeship through these times, and as we look at it from a remote working perspective, and also as we start looking at a return to the workplace. So firstly, we all need to better understand the unique circumstances of our apprentices, and then as employers, ensure we can enable them with the guidance, pastoral support, tools, and technology to be successful. A basic starting point in this is to ensure that they can collaborate effectively while remote. We cannot just assume that everyone has the same access to technology, nor the same access to connectivity. We need to bear in mind that not everyone's home environment is conducive to being on camera. And though we should encourage face time to build rapport, as that's important, it should not be mandatory or used as a detractor if a camera is switched off, for example. At IBM, we try to furnish our apprentices with the right tech, and we have policies that govern expectations for remote working, all grounded in empathy for differing personal circumstances. We also know it's harder for new employees to connect with teams and organizations while remote. I myself joined IBM at the height of the pandemic, and 8 months in, I've only been into an office on 2 occasions. Just think of what this must feel like for someone new to the world of work. We just need to support our apprentices with as many opportunities for connection as possible, not just the initial induction, not just team meetings and work-related calls, but opportunities to buddy up with apprentices who may be further along in their journeys and access to mentors and coaches. The key thing is to keep it interesting. One-to-one coffee chats, interactive events, informal opportunities to ask questions, get to know the company culture and build their network in more relaxed settings. Regular checkpoints just to see how they're doing and ensure we're checking up on their mental health. We need to ensure that our apprentices understand the support networks and resources available to them. For example, in IBM, we have our mental health first aiders, our IBM Employee Assistance Program, and a number of other communities like BAME, LGBT, and others where apprentices can access that additional support. I'm sure you would have the same. We should ensure line managers of apprentices are fully trained to understand the apprenticeship program and both its on and off the job requirements. In my experience, it's key. As line managers, they're an integral part and they're the integration point with your business. And it can lead to poor experiences and outcomes when they do not fully understand the needs of an apprentice. The requirements, like time off the job for their studies, the evidence for their endpoint assessments, and most importantly, some of the pastoral care that may be required for younger apprentices. As employers, we need to work closely and collaboratively with our training providers. Apprentice experience will depend heavily on how they are supported by both their day-to-day jobs and in pursuing their apprenticeship qualification. Often, a disconnect between the employer and the training provider can cause a mismatch in communication, expectations, and ultimately the apprentice's employee experience. So always work hand in hand with your training provider to take a holistic approach to your apprentice's learning. And don't forget the soft skills training. It's not just about academics or learning on the job role. We all know how important developing some of these softer skills around communication, how we present ourselves, and interact with others is to our career development. As things open up, use the opportunity for more face-to-face interaction, training, events, networking opportunities, but please bear in mind, we're returning to a new normal, and I'm not sure everyone is as keen to get back to commuting 5 days a week to sit at a desk. We've also noticed that with remote learning, there's often improved attendance at training, which we know can lead to better results. One of our ambassadors was recently reflecting to me. Their apprentices in some of their regional hubs are already asking that they do not return full-time face-to-face because of long commutes and otherwise. In future, I personally think a hybrid approach to being present should be adopted. Think about striking the right balance for your apprentices and determine what activities are truly more valuable in the workplace or classroom. Happy to explore further during the panel. Thanks, Anne.
Great, thanks so much, Damian. And I really like your point about the line managers and also the kind of holistic approach that's needed when it comes to supporting an apprentice as well. So it's all those kind of softer skills that play a really important role in that. Perfect. I'm now going to hand over to my next speaker, Anna. Over to you.
Thank you, and hi everyone. My name is Anna Morrison. I'm the founder and director of Amazing Apprenticeships, and we are an organisation that basically try to tackle misconceptions about apprenticeships and ensure that everyone knows about the benefits. So we work with a number of different audiences. We're probably best known for some of our work in schools and colleges. So we work with around 4,500 schools and colleges across England, engaging teachers and careers advisors to really understand the benefits of apprenticeships and then equipping them to be able to pass that knowledge and excitement on to their students and their families as well. We also, I guess we're kind of in the heart of the ecosystem of apprenticeships. We do a lot of work with training providers, as Damian mentioned, a really critical part of the apprenticeship partnership. We also work with apprentices themselves, and we help apprentices to share their stories to inspire others. We work with employers, large and small, so we get to benefit from seeing some of the best practice around the country in terms of apprenticeship programs, really large scale programs, but also small, quite niche programs as well. And then we also work a lot with government organisations and stakeholders. So whether it's the Education and Skills Funding Agency, local authorities, local enterprise partnerships, there's this whole kind of network of other people around the apprenticeship and skills sector that we link in with as well. And I'm also the owner of a small business, and we employ apprentices. So I'm going to talk to you today kind of with two different angles, because like I said, we get to see some of that really large scale practice happening across the country, but we also try to replicate that within our organisation and have first-hand experience of employing apprentices and what can make it work really well, and some of the lessons that we've learned over the years, of course, as well. I think some of the issues that we are seeing coming out of the pandemic is this need for businesses to understand all of these opportunities that are available. Damian talked about the myriad of incentive schemes and different programs that are out there. And I think when we think about apprentices, let's think about two types. Let's think about the apprentices that we've got on program already and the kind of support that they might now need and have needed over the past year coming through the pandemic, but also the potential apprentices that we might be seeking to attract and recruit into our businesses, because there's two slightly different needs coming through. So first of all, if I take our existing apprentices, and you've heard from Damian, some fantastic approaches that IBM have taken, really recognising that employers needed to be sympathetic to the situation that apprentices found themselves in, recognising that not everyone had equal access to digital connectivity and the devices or those environments in the home where they would be able to learn and work at the same time. But if we also think about some of the potential apprentices coming through, this is for me a big area of concern where we've seen a big gap widen. We know that a lot of young people have been living in households where they have had really limited access to digital devices. And that gap, the disadvantage gap, may have widened because not only have they missed out on some of that education and learning opportunities throughout the past 14 months, but they may also now not be in a position where they can connect fully to all of those digital opportunities that are online. So as employers, when you're starting to think about, isn't technology fantastic? It is, of course, and you can reach a much broader, potentially a broader kind of set of young people to be trying to entice them to apply for your opportunities. But if those young people are in a situation where they don't have access to digital devices and they can't connect with you, or perhaps they are from households, where they just wouldn't be able to access your recruitment opportunities, then you could be missing out on a really fantastic talent pool. So as much as I think the pandemic has forced us into a really technologically based way of thinking, we also need to be mindful of those that we might be leaving behind. For employers, there are a huge number of ways now that you can look to bring talent into your business, and we have got a lot of young people who are looking for opportunities. If you think about all of those young people who last year would have finished university, would have finished school, and then think about all those young people this year who are finishing university and school who perhaps haven't had those career opportunities available to them, have missed out on crucial hours of work experience and some of those key things that would have set them apart perhaps from the competition. This is where we're seeing a really big need for employers to be able to come in and create opportunities. And by that, it's not necessarily a complete full-time permanent position. It could be, that would be brilliant, even better if it's an apprenticeship, but there are other things that you could be engaging with as well. So if I just drop a couple of words in, there is a program called Kickstart, which is with the Department for Work and Pensions, Job Centre Plus, essentially, where you can employ a young person aged 18 to 24 who has been unemployed for 3 months or more, so claiming universal credit. And Job Centre Plus will help you to advertise that position, to recruit and fill it. They will give you £1,500 towards the setup costs for that individual. recognizing, you know, you're going to probably need to equip them with laptops and screens and things to be able to work from home. And they will pay the salary for that individual at the relevant national minimum wage for 25 hours per week. They will also pay the national insurance and pension contributions. So for employers, this is a fantastic, relatively low risk way of you being able to create opportunities for those young people who are desperate to find work and to prove themselves in the workplace. If I can do it, and we're a small business, there were 8 of us, you know, we've taken on one Kickstarter a month ago and our second Kickstarter starts on Thursday. We were so impressed with the caliber of individuals coming through this program and the support from Job Centre Plus. So I'd advocate you getting involved in that. Another program that you can look at is traineeships, and traineeships are designed for young people aged 16 to 24 who are looking for some work experience, some employability skills, and perhaps to work on their English, maths and digital before they can move on to an apprenticeship. As an employer, you get £1,000 towards the cost of providing a placement, and you as an employer are entitled to up to 10 lots of that £1,000 per region. So you could actually look at this as a rolling programme if you wanted to. Traineeships are really designed hopefully as a pre-apprenticeship. So the idea being that you could bring someone in, introduce them to your business, and then perhaps help them to progress into an apprenticeship position that you've got. And then, of course, we have apprenticeships themselves, and there is a huge number of incentives that you are able to access as an employer towards the cost of employing your apprentices as well. I think if I just move on to some of my areas of advice, I would say for employers, I would say, first of all, being really clear about why you are creating these opportunities in your business. Is it that you have got a skills deficit? Is it that you want to create an opportunity to give back to your local community? Is it that, you know, someone's going to be leaving the business in the next 18 months and you're doing some succession planning? But being really clear about why you want to invest in apprenticeships. And it is an investment. Taking on an apprentice is an investment. Not only are you paying their salary and releasing them for that training time, but it will take the time of yourselves, your team, to invest in them, to really bring them up to speed. But once you do get them up to speed, boy, you will see that return on investment in bucket loads, because the enthusiasm and the commitment that your apprentices will show to you, I think, will be second to none. I think Damian highlighted the importance of the training provider, and there are thousands of training providers, colleges, universities, independent training providers, employer providers. It's really important that as an employer, you take time to find the right provider that is going to work with you to create the apprenticeship program that you are dreaming of. So absolutely, you can look at your local provider base, but one of the good things of the pandemic is because so much learning has now moved online, you're actually able to access a wider range of training providers offering different models. It doesn't have to just be day release, it can be, you know, all sorts of different ways. So my other tip, I think, would be take time to talk to your local training providers. You can put them through a selection process. You can work with, there are brokers out there who will help you to kind of put together a process where you can really make sure you're finding the right provider to work with you. And that doesn't matter if you're only taking on one apprentice, you're looking 20, or kind of use it for your existing workforce. You know, do invest that time in getting the right provider. And I would say my final bit of advice would be around being aware, eyes wide open, of the support that your apprentices potentially could require. And that will be your existing apprentices who might be progressing to the next level, or bringing new apprentices in. I think particularly if you're bringing new apprentices in, and if they're of the younger age group, the disruption that they have faced over the past year has been incredible, and they have missed out on so many opportunities that perhaps would have prepared them for maturity in the workplace. And I think being ready to support and nurture and be patient with that talent, and really kind of don't assume that whatever model you may have had previously is now going to be fit for purpose. You may need to rethink it. And actually, the best people to guide you on this will be the young people themselves. So sit down with them, ask them what they need, make sure you really open up those communication channels from the very beginning, so that there's this real feeling of openness, particularly around mental health and well-being, which is where we've seen a significant impact. And yeah, make sure that I think if you're talking about it, then you will see any potential issues or challenges coming, and you'll be able to work with your training provider to support you to put the right support in place. You're not on your own. There is a whole network, as Damian said, you know, the London Apprenticeship Ambassador Network. We've got Apprenticeship Ambassador networks across the country. Experts, employers who are doing this day in, day out, have done it for years and will be able to support you as employers as well. So please don't feel like you're going to be on your own with this. And there's a lot of support out there for you. Thanks, Anne.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Anna. And I really like your points around kind of understanding the opportunities that are available as well, because I think sometimes they can be forgotten. And I am also guilty. I work a lot in the apprenticeship space, but just kind of forgetting that the impact of COVID, not having that work experience in place, and just bearing that in mind, really important point. So thank you. Great. We're going to head over to our next speaker. So Steph, over to you. Thank you.
Hello. Well, in terms of who I am and what I do, I guess, I basically manage all aspects of the day-to-day running of the PR apprenticeship program at the PRCA, and well, head of apprenticeships at PRCA. So this includes promotion of the program, so social media, outreach, business development. I recruit for PR agencies and teams and help support the apprentices that are actually on the program. So I'd like to believe that I have a unique insight into the sort of 360 journeys of the apprenticeship. So on the delivery side of things, my role involves quality assurance, and very importantly, of course, improving the program as much as possible as time goes on. And definitely that has been employed in this year, as well as overseeing the industry professionals who support our apprentices on a one-to-one basis. So those are our coaches. My personal aim, I guess, is to contribute, however small, to improving the diversity of the PR industry. So that's through recruitment and, of course, obviously through the nature of the apprenticeships as a whole. So, I mean, as we're here, and I know that everyone else has done the same thing, I also wanted to give a quick overview of what the PR apprenticeship actually is. And it is an 18-month program which gives keen candidates, a lot of the time, an opportunity to start and develop a career in the PR and comms industry. So it's 15 months training and 3 months being assessed. As the industry body, we also provide the training courses that actually help give apprentices a foundation level knowledge and understanding of the different elements of PR and comms. And in terms of, you know, what my thoughts are on the impact of COVID-19 on apprentices and the PR industry, and, you know, what we've done to support the apprentices on the program, I'll be lying if I said that there's been no impact on our apprentices over the past year. Alongside our internal changes, we've had to stay proactive in ensuring our apprentices feel supported from us, their coaches, and their employers where possible. So although our apprentices faced a few challenges with workload and in the descent, I guess you can call it, into lockdown, either too much or too little, we did try to make sure that our programs either weren't affected or, you know, positively reflected the changes in each of the apprentices' companies, if that makes sense. So, for example, the tech PR agencies and NHS trusts, for sure, they saw a rise in workload, so that naturally trickles down into the apprentices. So apprentices who worked in these fields were working on things they ordinarily won't have had the exposure or opportunity to do so at such a high level. So things like crisis communications, that was a big one. On the flip side, there were apprentices who worked in industries like travel, hospitality, who were affected on a really large scale as well. But their employers who were already working on creative ways to keep their staff occupied and their businesses running, often then chose to take, very thankfully, the government's offer of furlough, as many other companies have done as well. So essentially, when the sector is affected, so is the PR related to it. So the apprentices who were put on furlough were thankfully able to continue with their studies. So they were able to complete the knowledge elements of their qualification until they returned to work. Then they could resume the competency elements as well, which obviously that's where their actual day-to-day role came into play. Unfortunately, though, a few of our apprentices were made redundant as a result of the pandemic, and we supported them where possible to either complete their program without an employer, so that's the endpoint assessment at the end, or supported them in finding alternative employment. As Anna mentioned, definitely mental health was a big part over the last year, unfortunately, but I think as with everyone, you know, it's been a really strange time. So we've noticed that our coaches raised a lot of issues that the apprentices had shared, and apprentices struggling with remote working layout, and not having that face-to-face support from their colleagues as well. So just being, as Anna said as well, being, I guess, mindful of that, and trying to be as much of a support, definitely from our coaches, but from the sort of PRCA tree as well, trying to be as supportive as possible. So in an attempt to create a type of community, we did encourage apprentices, and we always encourage apprentices to connect with each other. I mean, what better person to relate to than someone who is literally in the same program as you, same position as you, same industry, same everything. And we already had a LinkedIn group, but over the last 7 months or so, we also introduced something called a guild group, which I like to describe as sort of in between WhatsApp and LinkedIn. And it basically brings the apprentices together in one place, gives them the opportunity to chat with each other. And you know, that's been quite successful, and I'm able to sort of post any updates that we have on the program alongside newsletters. Separately, we've also been running virtual networking sessions every few months to replace our previous face-to-face networking, to give apprentices an opportunity to put a face to a name of the other apprentices and have open chats about challenges that they might have faced. So I'll be there at the beginning, I tend to be, and then I leave them to, you know, openly network, because if it was face-to-face, I won't sort of be looking over their shoulders. And it's actually meant that our apprentices across the country have been able to attend without the need to travel to London, where majority of our apprentices are based. Although saying that, we are also scheduling a face-to-face networking in September too. But we are definitely going to continue with the virtual networking. It's been something that we're going to employ going forward. And in terms of my top recommendation of what businesses can do to best support their apprentices, for me, it's a strong onboarding process. That is literally key, because in that first, I guess, however many months of the apprentice being on program, it's really key that they build that confidence, as you were saying about soft skills as well, in terms of, you know, building relationships with people that they work with, but then being able to take that forward to build relationships with other people in the industry and networking. So the onboarding obviously includes pre-onboarding, where, you know, you're making sure that you get as much as possible organized in advance of the apprentice starting. So equipment, as you've already mentioned, and obviously contracts. But then there's the actual onboarding process of getting the apprentice comfortable in the team and meeting all the relevant people, including clients, because that definitely does build relationships as well, and confidence. It does give them that confidence going forward, and the ability to just sort of feel confident enough to go ahead and you know, make their mark in the industry, I guess you can call it. Particularly for PR and how creative and fast-paced it is, and I feel like our entry-level employees tend to feed off the atmosphere, and they always have, of the office, and they learn very quickly from watching and observing other people around them. And in the absence of this, you know, whether we're going forward with hybrid working arrangements or fully working from home, I feel that businesses do have to think of creative ways to emulate that office environment. So, you know, we have a remote onboarding process or guide, which employers or companies might find useful, whether or not they are going to continue working from home. So in there, it's tips like, you know, Friday working drinks for those that are over 18, or just activities, team activities in an informal setting, which again, sort of breaks down that barrier of, you know, thinking of these people as your manager and you can't go to them for certain things, possibly having a buddy for the apprentices when they start, someone who is sort of in between HR and manager, when they feel comfortable to talk to them as well. Yeah, that's my big tip.
That was perfect. Thanks so much, Steph. And I completely agree with your point. I think it does all come down to communication, and I guess there's quite a bit of a nervousness. Even I feel it sometimes, is you just turn around to somebody and chat to them in the office, and all of a sudden it's now a lot more difficult to say, oh God, should I ring this person, you know, have that dial in. So it's trying to make the apprentice feel as comfortable as possible. So completely agree. We've had a few questions come in, so I'm going to ask a few of those, and I also have a few for my own, but I'll kick off with some of the questions that have come in. Can you offer any advice on how to differentiate and support an apprentice versus an entry-level assistant?
Should I make a start?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Go for it, Damian. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think the question itself sort of lends to what I was saying earlier around understanding the requirements of an apprenticeship, because they are very different than just someone coming in as an assistant within the organization. You will understand that the apprentice themselves, they have both an academic element and a work element. So in terms of your support for them, you'll need to be able to support their academic progress, how they interact with the training providers, when they are made available so that they can do studies, exams, etc. There is also the fact that sometimes, not always, but sometimes you have younger folks coming in on an apprenticeship than you may have coming in through more traditional routes within the organization. I have watched people grow up in my previous organization where I ran the apprenticeship program, right? I've watched 16-year-olds come in, graduate at 20, and then start being professionals. And it takes a different mindset in terms of pastoral care that you're giving to a 16-year-old than, let's say, a 19-year-old who's already done A levels and entered the world of work. So I think to answer the question is, first understand the differences between the expectations, the requirements, the programs, and then you put the things around it to support the apprentice, because they do require more support than just an entry-level assistant. The good thing though is all of the good things you put in place for the apprentice, actually a subset of those would also apply to your entry-level folks. And I always tend to try and have as much cross-pollination as possible. And that way you share all of the good stuff across all of your programs.
Perfect, thanks Damian. Anna or Steph, do either of you want to come in and add anything else further to that?
I would actually say in terms of differentiating, as Damian said, it's an understanding of the program itself. So if you know what the units actually are on the program, what the apprentice needs to develop specifically around knowledge, skills and behaviours by the end of their program, that sort of gives a little bit more structure than an entry-level employee who is just doing things as and when they come along. So yeah, with an apprentice, there's a little bit more of a structure and an end goal, essentially. So you are hoping that they build up the relevant skills by the time they reach the end of their program. Whilst I guess an entry-level assistant would just be working and doing the things that are on the job description, maybe a little bit more ad hoc.
Thanks. Anna, do you want anything to add?
I would just add, with an apprentice, hopefully you're seeing them as a long-term investment. So it's great to take the opportunity to expose them to different parts of the business. Even if you're a small business, there will be different bits that they might be able to get involved in, and kind of developing that whole person into a number of different roles. I think particularly when apprentices come in at entry-level positions, they may not even understand the opportunities of the different types of careers and job roles that exist within your organisation. So to give them some exposure to that, even just by shadowing other members of staff, can be really fantastic for their development. And that's where you spot the magic. I think that's where someone will show that kind of real spark of enthusiasm for a particular job role that they had no idea existed, and you think, that is where I can put you and grow you and help to nurture and develop that.
Perfect, thanks so much, Anna. Another question's come in, and it's around when going back to the office, a lot of apprentices maybe haven't worked face-to-face with the client before, might not have met them before or been in an office environment, having those kind of professional interactions. Do you have any advice for businesses on how they can best support apprentices in that way? I don't know who would like to go first. Damian, I'm going to pick on you.
No problem. So this one's an interesting one, because I see that interaction with clients being as equally important in your remote working as in your sort of face-to-face within the office. Because if I think about our folks, we are always on sort of conference calls, WebEx, etc., with the client. So again, it goes back to ensuring that we sort of teach and promote some of these soft skills in a safe environment, sort of internal with peers, before sort of unleashing apprentices into environments where we expect them to act or behave in a certain manner without that background and training. I've seen it happen where apprentices have been thrust into situations where, quite frankly, they shouldn't have been. And you can see all of the nerves coming out, you can see all of the issues, whereas actually just taking a step back, preparing them a bit, having them do some internal presentations, brown bags of what they've learned, that makes them a hell of a lot more confidence when you then start putting them in front of clients.
Perfect, thanks Damian. Anna, would you like to come in?
Yeah, sure. And I can kind of answer this from personal experience of apprentices in our team as well who haven't worked in an office environment before. And I think my big piece of advice would be assume nothing. So imagine how alien it is particularly if you've come from a school or college environment where perhaps you have to put up your hand to be excused to use the lavatory, or you know, your break times, literally your life is run by bells going off and telling you which room you need to be in. We have found that apprentices, it's much safer if you assume kind of no knowledge of office etiquette at all, and you work with them to build up that knowledge, you know, literally from kind of what's expected of them. Dress code is a really big thing if you don't have a uniform, kind of knowing what they should wear and how to pitch it. Coming in, you know, offering to make teas and coffees for colleagues, but we would all do that. I'm not saying that apprentices are there to make teas and coffees. You know, I will walk into the office and say, right, who wants a cuppa? And, you know, even knowing the etiquette of, I don't know, if there's a biscuit tin or anything like that. So just make sure that you create that environment where they can ask you questions and it's just smiled away. And I loved Stephanie's point of the buddy, kind of somewhere between the line manager, mentor, HR, someone that they can just turn to and say, oh, how do we do such and such, or what's the process on this? Because there's so much to office etiquette, I think, that we take for granted. And there's a lot also I've noticed kind of bringing staff back into the office in reclimatizing people, and, you know, kind of reminding all staff of some of those different ways of working. So yeah, that would be my advice.
Perfect, thanks Anna. Steph, what would you like to add?
I was just going to say that, you know, about that, you know, keeping an open ear essentially, and letting the person know that you're there to support them, the apprentice know that you're there to support them, because just like everyone, people feel differently about going back into the office. Some people might be rearing to go and they literally can't wait to get back to that sort of collaborative nature of the office, but there are some people who, you know, might have anxiety about being around so many people at once, not so much in the office, but the journeys. So essentially giving them options, I guess, in terms of phasing them in slowly, possibly, and then having them come full time after a while. So whether or not it's that they're not in the office for a full day, or for a full week, and then they can sort of build up to whatever it is that your company is doing afterwards, and just being conscious, as Anna said, that, you know, they might not have been in that situation before, so it might be a lot to take on.
Great, thanks so much, Steph. And then another question that's come in from the chat is, let me just read it. So one of the attendees has come from a small agency, and they previously had to let people go as a result of the pandemic, and now they're left in quite a big gap with senior members of staff and also apprentices. And they're just wondering, is there a kind of solution in kind of helping bridge that gap just between perceptions of apprentices with more senior members of the team? Damian, over to you.
I'm sensing a trend here. So I think we've all experienced this. I've worked for two very large companies in Accenture and IBM with two very large apprenticeship programs, and a lot of it has to do with how we educate the wider organization and what apprentices bring to the table, and how they, you know, how they can sort of add value to our clients. One of the things that we do is, and, you know, we did back at Accenture, is we set up profiles for apprentices in terms of here's all the good stuff that our apprentices are doing, and then we made sure that we communicated that to the wider organization. And if you think specifically, you know, we would call out apprentices who are working with clients, helping to define new solutions, doing really innovative stuff, winning industry awards, accredited with industry standards. And once you start building up those profiles and the business started to understand, wow, so I can get one of these folks at that level with all that experience, then the conversation started to get more around, okay, how many apprentices can I have, as opposed to what does an apprentice bring to the table? So I think it's about education, right? And every organization is different, but you need to educate the folks within the organization to understand the capabilities that your apprentices can bring, and then show them examples of what really good apprentices look like.
Great, thanks, Damian. Anna, or maybe I'll start now. Sorry, Anna, over to you.
Yeah, I'd echo that. I think we try through our daily huddles to kind of celebrate the achievements of the apprentices, no matter what it is. If they've contributed something to the team that's helping our processes or systems, then we try to flag that to raise awareness. But I also try to buddy our apprentices up on particular projects with other senior managers, so that they get to, for a period of time, work together, and that manager will hopefully then see those capabilities for themselves firsthand and have their eyes opened as to how much the apprentice can do. And completely agree with Damian, it doesn't take very long before they start going, actually, I'd quite like them to work with me on this project, and they start getting brought into more. So yeah, I think that's really valuable.
Great, thank you. And Steph?
Agree with everything, basically, but also to say that it's breaking down the misconception that the level of work that apprentices do is low, because a lot of the time it's not, and they do really key stuff for the business. So yeah, just celebrating it publicly and making sure that obviously that everyone within the company is aware of what the apprentices are doing and how they've contributed, but also it helps with the apprentices' confidence, because then they will be putting themselves forward for more things, and it's just a give and take. Essentially, it benefits everyone, I think. So yeah, publicly congratulating and celebrating apprentices is key.
Great, thanks so much. I know we've touched on a bit of mental health earlier in the conversation, and I just kind of want to come back on that, because obviously it's I think the pandemic's kind of brought that into the forefront of it, and many apprentices might feel really uncomfortable. I know there's some studies done recently, I think it was by the OU, talking about how apprentices don't feel comfortable talking to their employers about mental health issues. Do you have any advice for businesses on how they can make apprentices feel supported in that area? Damian, over to you.
Yeah, I think it's all about the channels that you provide. So when we think about, there are two things. There are there's the work that we do, and I'll talk about IBM in terms of training up mental health allies, so that a much larger cross section of employees understand the issues and challenges that people with mental health may face on a day-to-day basis and how to respond to those. And then there are the official channels, as I sort of called out earlier, around our official mental health support that we provide. Not everyone will want to go through an official channel. Lots of people might want to just have a conversation with someone that they trust. So building up that pool of mental health allies across the organization and publicizing it. So, I can talk for both IBM and Accenture. When people walk around with, a mental health ally badge or a lanyard or something, so that that this is someone that you can reach out to and speak to. And it's about giving people as many avenues as possible to reach out. And that could be both internally and externally, signposting those resources, signposting those people, and then letting people choose which avenue they're comfortable with. You can't force advice down folks. You can't force them to pick up support. All you can do is make as many channels available as possible and encourage them to use those channels when they need.
Great, thank you very much, Damian. Anna, over to you.
Thank you. I would just echo everything Damian said and kind of build on that. I think if we take the view that prevention is better than reaching crisis point and needing intervention, then really thinking as an employer, kind of what are your staff telling you? And it won't just be your apprentices, it will be all of your employees, I'm sure. Kind of where might there be some challenges and issues? Where as an employer do you need to be mindful of? And I'm sure, you know, particularly whether it's a small team or a large team, you will know when those stress points are coming, won't you? You know when there are deadlines to be hit or someone's workload is increased, and what you don't want to do is get to the point where people are having to go off sick or, you know, or kind of really reaching that crisis point. So recognizing what some of those triggers may be, the warning signs as you know, things start to become more stressful, or you see anxiety levels going up, or you're kind of recognizing that, and how you can then respond and intervene as an employer. And it could well be signposting to other things. It could be that there just needs to be, you know, hang on a minute, we just haven't got capacity to do this. How can I redistribute some of this workload? But I think also recognizing as an employer, kind of how far are you willing to go with this, you know, because there are going to be huge employers who have got, you know, really well structured healthcare packages that they can offer their employees, and then you'll have smaller businesses who perhaps aren't going to be able to offer that same level of support. So working out as an employer, where are you going to stand on this? How are you going to invest in it? And then how can you see it through? Because I think there's nothing worse than raising false expectations of, you know, we would respond like this, that, and the other, and actually when push comes to shove, not having that support in place. So really making sure that you're content with the level of support that you're putting in place to look after your employees of all ages and all levels.
Great, thanks so much, Anna. Steph, have you got anything else to add?
That's actually what I was going to say in terms of the differences between large and small organizations. And obviously the large companies, they can have a few different people that people can go to if they're struggling with mental health at any point, or they're struggling with stress, or they don't really know who to talk to within their team. They can go outside of that because they have they have the room to do that. But for smaller companies, if you talk about 15 people in a company, for example, and maybe you might go to another quote unquote team, you still possibly might run into them very soon after you've just had the chat. So being aware of what that might mean. So 100% just letting people know what those avenues and channels actually are, because people respond to things differently. So they might not want to talk to someone face to face. It might just be a simple phone call an anonymous phone call, just to get something off their chest about work, or about their personal life. And essentially what Anna said as well, that it doesn't just affect apprentices. Of course, it's affected everyone. It's affecting everyone in this period, but obviously going forward, and always has done. But yeah, definitely just having things in place that they can choose, essentially, instead of just, saying that you can talk to someone, or, well, good luck, basically. So I mean, with the PRCA members as well, just to add, we have got a helpline that people can call, and that's why I mentioned the anonymous call, but then also bringing up the buddy again. If you have someone that you can sort of offload to, essentially, around the work side of things, but also around mental health as well, then they can escalate it if need be.
Great, thank you. And I think it's that power of just being able to talk to someone, maybe who's just a bit outside and away from it all, is always really helpful as well. Great, so another question I just wanted to get your thoughts on. Do you have any best practice examples that you're aware of where a business has gone above and beyond to support their apprentices? And I appreciate this, the range of businesses here, so not necessarily about kind of chucking money at everything, but if you've got any best practice examples, and maybe a good plug of your organisation, and more than welcome to hear that. So Damian, over to you.
Okay, so there are a few programs that I would say we run at IBM, for example, that I would say is best practice. So one would be around a lot of the community work that we do, in terms of giving apprentices the opportunity to get involved with lots of what we call give back activities, whether that's within BAME or LGBT plus, or to do with technology innovation groups, foundation, females, but creating lots of environments outside of the day-to-day job where they can go and they can interact with colleagues, and it's not just focused on work. We also run lots of programs around training and development that actually are only available to our early years professionals, and not to to sort of other IBMers and specifically focus on apprentices and their growth and their skills development. But all in all, it's all around thinking about what are the things that we can put in place to make, you know, IBM one of the best places to work for an apprentice. And then it sort of all revolves around the apprentice experience, their learning and development, and the community connection, right? So, and I'm sure that those are things that we can do, whether it's large or small companies. A great example was a chap once came to me and he asked about building a group of folks to do skydiving and whether that could become a community. But it's that, you know, it's that kind of thinking and that kind of innovation that, you know what, we have lots of like-minded people, and whether it's cooking or skydiving or kayaking, whatever it is, think about different groups that you can get folks involved in.
Great, thank you. And that person's very brave for skydiving. So, and Anna, over to you.
Yeah, I love that point from Damian. I think so much of this is about remembering to help your apprentices to have fun and connect with other people. And we hear a lot, don't we, about, but what about missing out on the university experience, as if that's kind of a, you know, the panacea. But actually, there's lots of ways of helping apprentices to connect with other individuals in the businesses, other apprentices and non-apprentices. And I think often that's great in big businesses. They will have a lot of networks. And for smaller businesses, like we've heard from Stephanie, you know, there are other opportunities that the training provider might organise, or there are other schemes as well, you know, outward bound things where they still get to go and have a laugh and do whitewater rafting and connect with other young people, you know, particularly for the younger apprentices. And some of the best practice that I've seen as well, I would like to pick up on the kind of equality, diversity and inclusion piece. And I think for employers who really embrace apprenticeships in the most flexible way and really think about how apprenticeships could help them to facilitate having a more diverse workforce. And that could be individuals with disabilities or learning difficulties, or from a care experience background, or from, you know, have experience of the youth justice system, or kind of really thinking about, you know, this isn't just about us finding the best talent. This is also about creating opportunities for people who might not have that opportunity, you know, who might get missed out by recruitment and selection processes, and trying to think about your corporate social responsibility, how you can give back to the community, and how you can do something to create an opportunity for a young person who otherwise would miss out. And I think that is some of the best practice stuff that I love seeing out and about with businesses.
Great, thanks, Anna. Steph.
And yeah, Anna, that's actually incredible, and I second that. But in terms of, you know, another example, I would say, and this is what all employers technically should be doing, but, you know, maybe it's not at the forefront, and it's very, you know, employers can be very focused on the day-to-day setting of the work, but, you know, gaining a clear understanding of where the apprentice wants to go in their career, and essentially trying to put things in place in terms of, you know, offering them relevant opportunities within their program, but also outside of that to hopefully secure, you know, relevant knowledge and skills and experience that would help them get to that role at a later date, whether it's in your company, but, you know, being without being, you know, I don't want to use the word selfish, but, you know, just thinking of the learner specifically, and being able to have that honest conversation. Okay, in 4 years, you might not be here. Where do you want to go afterwards? And actually putting them in the relevant spaces for them to get the experience to look good for the other teams within your company, or other employers. So it could be working in other teams or departments if they've shown an interest in that, or just generally, you know, giving them additional training courses and things like that that would, again, make them look good to other employers. But then just to come back to celebrating publicly your apprentices, it doesn't have to be just within the company. It can be on your company page as well, on your socials. If your apprentices have done stuff that is really impressive, then definitely let the world know. And that will definitely make them feel great and make them feel valued in the company, and they feel as though, okay, they have contributed quite massively to how the company is run. But also you can and what some companies have done, and I'm speaking recently because we have the PR internship and apprenticeship awards that we do, entering them into the awards to celebrate them and say, actually, we think that you've done an amazing job, and you should get an award for it. So yeah, things like that. Mind.
Super, no, thank you. Just very conscious of time, so I just wanted to invite some closing remarks from the speakers, and perhaps a kind of final top tip to give to businesses who'll be watching this. Damian, if you'd like to go first.
Yeah, sure. So I think we covered a lot of ground here, but we'd all agree that apprenticeships are an amazing opportunity for the apprentice, but also an amazing opportunity for the businesses as well in terms of getting talent. If I think about the key things that a business should be looking at, one is, be very clear about how those apprenticeships sort of fit into your overall business success and strategy. And then once those two things are aligned, you will find that the value of your apprentices become more apparent more quickly to everyone in the business, right? So make sure that you've got that kind of alignment. Two, look at opportunities, I think, to develop what we call a growth mindset, right? And this is not just apprentices, this is everyone in the organization, right? But an apprenticeship is a journey, right? It's a journey where you're learning, but it's only the beginning of the journey, right? So, understand exactly what you see as a long-term culture that you want to build within those folks coming into the organization itself, and then ensuring that everyone is that continuous learning, continuous growth type mindset. Apprenticeships aren't just for 16-year-olds and 18-year-olds, right? There's lots of apprenticeships. There are master's degree apprenticeships. There are apprenticeships that you can use to retrain employees later on, people returning to work after a career break. There's so much potential across the apprenticeships standard and spectrum that, as an employer, you need to look at that full spectrum. And finally, I'd say, don't forget the pastoral care bit. That's a bit where if you get that wrong, you won't be successful. If you get it right, you will have a bunch of enthusiastic, engaged, and loyal employees that will probably be promoting your brand for decades to come.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Damian. Anna.
Thank you. I would build on Damian's point actually about the growth mindset. And I think if you're looking to set up a new program in your business, or perhaps revise and refresh an existing apprenticeship program, taking the time to equip yourself with all of the knowledge and information on the latest developments with apprenticeships is a really worthwhile exercise. Apprenticeships are not what they were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. They change, and they keep changing a lot as well. So I would say take the time to really understand who your experts are out there who can support you with this, because they will fast track you to the right bits of information, first of all. Then work with them, work with your training providers, work with others in the sector who can help to connect you to the right bits of information so that you can really make an informed decision. And I think Damian's point about exploring all of the levels is really well made. Apprenticeships are both for new recruits as well as for the existing workforce, and the range of opportunities with apprenticeships now are just phenomenal. So take time, do your research, surround yourself with experts, and make sure that you build a program that you're going to be happy with, because at the end of the day, as an employer, you are investing in this program and it will be an investment. So you need to make sure it's going to deliver for you. Thanks.
Thanks, Anna. Excellent tips. Steph, final thoughts.
Final thoughts, and just building on everything essentially, and thinking of the future, not just for the apprentices, but also for your company, and how they can contribute to you, and how they can contribute to how the business even looks as well, to clients that you're working with. And definitely, I feel as though your clients will definitely respect you a lot more in the fact that you are investing in your staff, whether or not it's that you're bringing in new apprentices or you're retraining people that already are in your company. So, just thinking of how you can use apprentices to grow your company, yes, in terms of the growth approach, but also grow the apprentices that are working with you. And I would just say, go big. think big, essentially, and you know, try not to just follow the program and the units that your training provider gives you. Think outside of that, and how, as we spoke about, you know, skills, soft skills and things like that, how you can help your apprentices develop outside of just their program. Yeah, that would be my final thought. I'm looking at the time.
No, fantastic, thank you so much, and big thank you, virtual applause to all three of you for being excellent today. And I think we can wrap the session up there. We'll post this online, we'll be sharing it for our PRCA members, but just want to say a big thank you for your time. And I know a lot of businesses will be leaving a lot wiser about how to best support their apprentices. So thank you so much. Have a nice day.